a voice one or? All right. Okay. All right. All right. So, well, I'm Don Ayers and I'm here in Alma.
Present in Alma, Michigan.
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 All right. We got a 2020 Planning Commission year-end summary report. I'm not sure, Eric, what we're supposed to do with that, but I'll let you fill us in.
Yep, just there's no action needed for that.
Okay.
And it's just get it on your agenda that it's been submitted to you for your review, and it is on the website for the public's review also, and it will continue to be there for the next 5 years at least. So we weren't as we had 8 regular meetings last year, as opposed to our I think we were up to 12 year before, 13, because I think we did have a special meeting. But with COVID and everything, we had a very busy year. As you take a look through the numbers that we had, but got a lot done, even though we were virtual. So,
yeah. All right. Moving on, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held on February 1st, 2021. And if anybody's got any changes or suggestions before we vote, now's your chance. So,
Move approval.
all right, you got a motion for approval
Support Wheeler.
and support. All those in favor can say aye and give us a thumbs up.
Aye.
All right, looks like it passed. Anybody opposed? Thumbs down. I don't see any. So, all right. The next thing is a public hearing for a special use permit request for a temporary outdoor sales of fireworks from Richard Tapper in the parking lot located at the Tractor Supply parking lot. The proposed dates for the sale are June 22nd, 2021 to July 5th, 2021. Kind of a yearly thing. So we'll let Eric fill us in and go from there.
sounds good. Thanks, Don. Yep, this is I think the 3rd time or 4th time we're doing this with Phantom Fireworks. As you mentioned, it's at 1755 Wright Avenue, which is the Tractor Supply parking lot. That's where they were located last year. That's general business B2, which we do allow outdoor sales with the permit and the owner's permission, which they have in your packet. Sales area is a 40 fire resistant tent. They provided that information to us also. They will have a storage container on site like they did in previous years. That's an 8x40. Like I mentioned, they did provide their lease agreement with the owner, proof of insurance, their site plan for movement and customer flow, and the evacuation plan if needed. After this meeting, they'll submit the approval to the state of Michigan for their Michigan sales license. And then obviously we'll provide a copy of this information to the Public Safety Department, just making them aware that the sale will be happening out there, and just making everybody aware. So pretty straightforward. Like I mentioned, this is the same company we've worked with in the past, and Richard is online if anybody has any questions.
All right, looks pretty straightforward, just like it's been in the past. So this is a public hearing, so if anybody has any comments, the hearing is open.
I think this is Rick from Phantom Fireworks, and I think you guys have in that package, I emailed you a copy of our state license that we received already from the state of Michigan Fire Marshals.
All right, that's good to have. Anybody got any other comments or anything? Nobody's called in.
We had no comments one way or the other, Don.
All right.
Just to get it on the record, if we could, Don, since we've this is a ongoing thing for several years now. There's been no problems in the past, correct?
No.
Very good.
Nope, I've never heard any, and I've bought stuff from them too. So
Thank
they
you.
run a pretty good place, I think. So, all right. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
All right. I got a motion and support to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye and give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. Any opposed? It didn't look like there'd be anybody to be opposed. So it looks like that part of it's done. All right.
Thank you very much.
Well,
And
we'll
I'll move
entertain a
and I'll
motion
move we
to
approve
approve
it.
it. Yeah.
I'll
All right.
move we approve the special use permit.
All right. We got a motion
Second.
and support for approving the permit. All those in favor say aye and thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
I think it passed unanimously. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Yep. Thank you very much. You too. Enjoy. Be safe, guys. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard.
All right. The next is a site plan review for 225 East Warwick. Prism Primary Care is proposing to construct a 5,123 square foot medical office. The vacant parcel is located just north of Mid-Michigan Medical Center's facility. The property is zoned OS Office Services. The proposed use is a permitted use in the OS district and requires a site plan approval by the Planning Commission. And this looks like it's their final site plan. Am I correct there, Eric?
Yep, I'm hoping that we at least get this part of the project over with tonight. The first two layouts are the newest site drawings. Last meeting, as you remember, we didn't have any site landscaping details, which they have provided. They are going to be providing 5 red bud trees and 2 dogwood plantings. Along with to the north, there will be a 6-foot privacy fence and or buffer screening for the multifamily residential off of Heather Lane there. Mary Court. Also, they did provide for us here some extra information for the drainage and the driveways, and David will speak to that a little bit more. On the new drawing, you'll see a detention pond to the north. The slope is a 1/4 slope, so that is a mobile slope. This plan will be submitted to the Gratiot County Drain Commission for their approval and verification of the proper movement of water and on through the property. They will, as you can see from some of the notes on those drawings, there'll be a lot of field verification with the utilities, working with the city staff for those connections, and if the utilities that may be on site, they're going to try to reuse some if they're viable to be used. So that's why those notes are made as verify on site. And then when they go to put in a new sign, they'll need a sign permit that meets the sign ordinance. And there was one change, obviously, as you can see, when they put in that retainage, the building had to be moved to the south. So the new front yard setback is 51 feet, which is fine. The required is 30. And then the rear yard is now 49 feet and required 20. So everything from our standpoint, from a site plan, other than, like I said, the utilities, looks good to staff's point of view.
Okay. Dave, got any other comments on it, or?
Yeah, I reviewed what's shown here. I'm going back to my site plan comments from February 10th, just because these were submitted late last week. I have no time to go over and do another review of it. But the drive approaches, as presented, I think we can work with those. Still some information missing from what was listed on the February 10th drawings. As far as, like Eric mentioned, they've got a lot of field verify for water and sanitary connections. That's not really overly concerning to me because they've got options as far as on-site where to connect and in the right-of-way. They want to, based on what I've talked with their civil engineer, they want to try to connect to existing water and existing sanitary laterals. So they want to try to find where those are at. One thing I do want to note, though, is the existing sanitary condition, and they're going to have to field verify this, but it's likely going to be an old clay tile. So if they connect to it with a brand new building, they still may have problems with it a few years in the future if they're going to try to use an old sanitary lateral. So that choice is still theirs on if they want to reuse any of those. The water line should be okay, but they need to make sure it's going to be sized accordingly to what they're going to need for their building. But those are still not shown on the drawings. There's as far as the existing utilities that they're going to connect to, the drawings still don't show anything as far as what size existing storm line that they're proposing to connect to, and that leads into my concerns with the stormwater. The biggest concern that I have is the stormwater retention system that's shown on the drawings are shown right over top of existing sanitary sewer mains, that sanitary and the water main. Now they've got a ridge that's shown to provide some cover over that sanitary main that's in the center of that West Alma Public Services requirements because number of reasons. First one is this is a wet time of year. I don't know how this storm retention pond is going to be designed, but there's a good chance there's going to be water in this for a good portion of the year. If that water main ever breaks, it's going to be difficult to know, A, that it did break, because unless you see bubbling coming out of there. But the biggest concern single-handedly is going to be maintenance of that. If that line breaks in that retention pond, it's going to be extremely difficult to pump the water out of that. Then, by its very nature, it's a retention pond, so there's going to be a substantial amount of groundwater. We're likely going to be digging in quicksand and muck and mud, so it's going to be very problematic, if not impossible, to get to that water main. They are talking about lowering that water main to provide enough cover, but there is nothing shown on this drawing as far as a profile for the proposal of lowering that water main to get enough ground cover over it. Based on a conversation with the site civil engineer, right now, if they were to build it, it'd be extremely minimal cover, so it won't work for Michigan frost. We want to have a minimum of 5.5 feet cover on top of that thing. But that's problematic no matter how you look at it. Same thing with that sanitary. If we have to dig that thing up and we're literally straddling two retention ponds, that doesn't work. So they need to come up with a different idea as far as their stormwater retention. As far as a couple questions I have, I don't know if the Drain Commission will allow them to shrink the size of this retention area. What would be nice is if we could get rid of that westmost retention pond drainage swale. That would help probably get rid of all the concerns that I have as far as that goes. Or if a potential might be sliding that pond to the east, if the property owner owns that property to the east, maybe that's amenable to them to encroach and get some property on the other side and change that property footprint, or realigning that pond in another fashion. Underground retention might be an option. It is expensive. They may be able to do a hybrid system. I've talked a lot of conversations I was having with their civil engineer this late after. Maybe some type of a hybrid where they have a certain percentage of their stormwater will be underground under that parking lot, then drain up to the north. Maybe that's an option. I don't know. That's up to their civil engineer and to find out if the Drain Commission might work out some give and take with that, maybe oversizing the storm lines that go to the city storm system just to have extra capacity for holding. I don't know. But as far as what I can see, that stormwater retention plan where they've shown it is not going to be acceptable for the public services standpoint. Another thing is I would like to see proposed grades on this drawing. There's nothing right now that shows where the new site grades will be drained to. You can make assumptions that it'll go to those drainage swales. But from what I know of the existing site, right now it drains from north to south. And it would be nice to see some proposed elevations on the site, as well as how the retention pond will be. If there is any kind of rerouting of that water main, there needs to be a profile of that. But as far as no solution to lower that, because I don't want to see a retention utilities, because there's no good way to maintain those or service those in the future. Those were my comments based on what I have seen, and as well as looking at some follow-up from my initial February 10th memo. So if anybody has any questions at this time.
Oh, you said something about using old clay, the clay tile for sewer line. I think that's a huge mistake too. I would rather see them put something else in there. If they want to try using it, they need to upgrade that. That's that's an accident waiting to happen too.
I can't
My
force
opinion.
it on them, but it is a note that I would like them to be at least cognizant of. Maybe if they excavate and they find some plastic, life would be good. I can't say yes or no on what they can connect to, but yes, I could foresee some issues with that in the future. And with a brand new building, you might make assumptions that, well, it's all new utilities. It should drain well, but if you're connecting to it, you're still at its mercy.
Right.
Is there any way they could move that building more to the south on the property to give more room back there for that drainage retention or something back there, Dave? Because you could.
I would refer that to their civil engineer as well as the architect for the simple reason, as far as zoning standpoint, they probably could do that, but with what type of traffic flow they're trying to get and parking for the parking along that southeast side, that could be an option, but that would be something they might have to figure out. But it would be doable, but it depends on how they want to maneuver their parking areas there.
Well, I guess my suggestion would be to table this until we get some more clarification. I mean, would that's an option, Eric, for them, or I mean, I guess we've never really had too much problem with site plans before. This one sounds like it's got some problems.
We do need some, like Dave mentioned, the Drain Commission looking at what they're proposing. Is it something that the Drain Commission is going to accept? Obviously, like Dave just mentioned, from his standpoint, his department standpoint, the drainage swell to the west is not something that
Right.
he'll support. So,
Right. Do we want to send it back to them then? Or I mean, how do we do this without screwing them up royally? But I mean, they
I
obviously
think we
have
need
some work
more
to do.
information,
Yeah.
more, talk to the Drain Commission and see what their suggestions are. And I'm not comfortable approving this without knowing that it's going to benefit them.
I have to agree. I'm really not comfortable with agreeing with approving it either, at least right now.
well, we can take those notes down that David's mentioned as part of the minutes, and then if that's a motion by one of the members, that the site plan pending additional information on the drainage from and connections for Public Works and at the Drain Commission, that's how we can at least move forward.
I would at least amend that, or at least have you considered that they would to require that they change the configuration of the drainage, the retention area.
If somebody wants to put that in the form of a motion,
Yes. Are we looking to approve it based on Dave and approving what changes they come back with? Or would you prefer we just table it and not give them anything? Do you know anything about their construction schedule? Are they planning on breaking ground right away? And
I do know they want to go out for bid, sooner than later, but they still need approvals from the Drain Commission to get a good bid from somebody.
At this level, I guess what at least my thought would be, I would prefer to table it. Because the type of changes that we're talking about, if they're going to bid it, those could change. Definitely going to change their construction costs.
substantially, I would think.
Yes, and if they still need to talk to the Drain Commission, maybe it's as simple as they will reduce the size of that. But right now, that's a big enough question as far as where I have their utilities at right now. It's a concern.
I'll move that we table it then, or second Michelle's, I guess, was that your intention, was to table it, Michelle?
Yes.
I would second hers, and then if it is necessary for the group and they come back with a viable plan, we can always call a special meeting and get them the approval
I agree.
before our next meeting if we need to.
all right, I got a motion and support to table this. And if we need to come back for a special meeting, we can do that. And all those in favor say aye or give me a thumbs up.
Aye.
Aye.
It's like that's unanimous. So I guess there's no reason to ask the other bit. All right. I guess we'll see what happens, Eric. And, like Greg said we can meet. This is no big deal to get back together in a week or so, or even 2 weeks, and see what happens. Okay.
Yep, I can schedule a meeting according to the statute, 18 hours. Right. And since we can meet by Zoom, we can do that fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey,
All right.
hey, Eric, speaking of medical offices, what's the status of the one as you head to the east towards same side of the road as you head down there? It looks like this dilapidated whatever.
Well, we spoke to the contractors on that were working on it. I think they're trying to work out a deal with the current owner of that. The last discussion I had with them, Aaron's been reaching out to them about, maintenance things, those, mowing, those sort of things, about reducing the size of the overall build, getting it finished, but it'll be a smaller footprint most likely when we see it all said and done. So they are working on a different plan. But we'll see, Jim, in the next 3-4 months when the weather gets a little bit better. If it's not, then we'll be looking at some other actions.
Okay.
Yeah, currently their building permit remains open through extensions, so they get charged an extension every 6 months, and we make sure that they're keeping the site secure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
All right. The next order of business.
I'll let Aaron speak a little more in detail to it, but Aaron did go and try to find some comparables or something that we could look at to get a feel for what we could look at. The only one that he was able to come across that actually has gone through a complete review and update is Ann Arbor. But as you can see, it's a little more complicated than I probably would like it from a standpoint of staffing and trying to explain to people even when they call us what they can and can't do. And then the others that Aaron was able to find and did provide for you, they haven't brought them all up to the current and recent law. But there is some pieces of those other ordinances that, as we're looking through the whole sign ordinance, that would be nice to adopt and use. We don't have to redo the like, for instance, the large.
And everyone's still very much in process on this. So if you could say lots of things, but we're not behind the game on this. At looking at this, I think we're right along with everyone else. Ann Arbor, I do like what they're doing in the fact that they're covering their bases by allowing everyone to have one temporary sign, no matter when it is. And for as long as they want. That covers your freedom of speech. You've always got a form of expression. And then they allow other signs in the yard for limited periods of time. But they rein that back in by the overall square footage of all the sign faces of the temporary signs within a private residence being under a certain square footage. Like Eric said, what's a little from a enforcement and management standpoint, how they handle their election signage. They essentially say, well, you can have one sign all the time, but you can have up to a number of signs, but only for, say, so many days per year and no more than 2 weeks consecutively. So for a logistical standpoint, that means someone's got to be keeping track of the erection date of every sign. And then going back and checking those and saying, nope, you've got to take your sign down for a week. Okay, next week you can put it back up, but only for, this many more days, and you got to take it back down. It's not a bad way to go, but it is a lot of logistics from the city standpoint.
See, do we really want to get involved in all that?
Do you really want to stick your toe in all of that? But that is how their lawyers got around that issue of being able to expand it during an election and contract it the rest of the year by saying, well, you can have extra signs into their temporary nature, but only for this many days a year.
It appears everybody's still waiting for that model ordinance that we keep talking about that will fit everybody else, because there just aren't any out there. I mean, as we talked about this one, it just seems really, really convoluted. As Eric was trying to explain it to me when we're talking, I said, it's hard to even explain it to each other as we're talking about it, let alone the general public.
Communicate to the public, yeah.
Yeah, where you have it right in front of you where you can read it.
They were trying to touch everything and give everybody some options. But from a staffing and enforcement, and then from the sheer just explanation to folks on what you can and can't do, I don't know how you do it. Showing up every 14, after, saying, okay, yep, it's been 14 days, go ahead and put something else back up. I mean, I don't even know how, maybe they have a bigger staff in Ann Arbor, but it can't be that big. I don't know how you keep up with, I just know how you
especially off period, and then you can go 45 days again. Well, an election period is longer than 45 days long. So in an election, theoretically on the books, they have someone coming by in the middle of an election saying, okay, it's been 45 days, everybody take your signs down, you can put them up next month. It just seems wonky. I think a good
well, yeah, because you have primaries and you have school board, you have special elections, you have, I mean, you
have fundraising drives too that people
sure.
put stuff out for. So,
you can have 2 or 3 elections a year, in theory. I know the state tried
temporary signs is in that 5 to 7. Ann Arbor did the 45 with a 30-day off, but it's awkward. I would still, recommend
realistically, when you try and regulate these things like they did billboards on the highways. Anybody notice the number of semis parked, old semi trailers parked alongside highways now with billboards on them? I mean, that's just skirting the issue. So no matter how well you write this, I think you're going to find problems.
It looked like Ann Arbor addressed that too, though, Greg. If you read through it, they said
they did.
Nothing parked in the yard with signs on the side of trucks and cars and all that, unless they were.
But even that, it gets like Aaron used that word wonk. Who's to say they don't have
to work?
Yeah, exactly. And then another family member has one, and then how do you prove it isn't?
To look at it, but I would still like to know if it is so many days prior to and so many days after a scheduled election. It doesn't talk about the content of the sign. You could have a whole bunch of commercial signs in your yard over an election, and we wouldn't argue with that. But that is a way, without doing the whole this many days on, that many days off, to address the commercial signage or the election signage in a residential district, and then give everybody their one. I think you should.
Elections are scheduled. You could even avoid the word election. And I mean, we know the windows for elections. You could avoid the word election altogether and just say certain, name certain time periods.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the state's got 2 actually, the one in the spring, one in the fall, right?
Signage, and that's not like fun.
Yeah, but that's still easier probably than looking at this other ordinance that we were looking at.
Don't disagree.
The thing is, obviously we want to make sure we're consistent with the law and the Constitution. The other thing is to not create something that people can't understand. Right. That's the worst thing, is to put something out there and say, well, it's right there in black and white, but if it doesn't make sense, then people aren't going to follow it. If it doesn't make sense, people aren't going to follow it.
Right.
I'm looking at this and saying, you can imagine the discussions in Ann Arbor around election time as you get to this. That would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, from an enforcement standpoint, I don't want to get too overzealous either, because sometimes being overzealous forces an issue of someone saying, oh yeah, well, I'll just push the envelope too. So
some other things of note, just kind of in my research, pawing through and reading all of these fantastic pieces of ordinance. No one is really permitting signs taller than 5 feet in a residential district. No one that I could find is permitting any sort of illumination on a sign in a residential district. So, and we haven't traditionally either. And that's in the not over this height and not illuminated is in the Grand Rapids ordinance. So, and I don't think that would have any issue with the legal challenges coming out of Texas.
Well, there's some good points and there's a lot of bad points in that Ann Arbor one, but we just got to figure out how to do it, like Eric said, simple as possible, but still kind of cover it,
If we can figure that out, we can sell it.
We probably could. Yeah.
Well, how about this? We'll do some just some, some from a staff point of view, just some thoughts, like some wording on, instead of saying maybe election, or maybe, I don't know, using the word election, or maybe just some months, and then bring that back and just kind of get a feel for what it sounds like to your ears, and does it sound reasonable? It just, I don't want to have Aaron or myself, or even, and for that matter, some police officers, because they can enforce the sign ordinance also, of going up and knocking on doors, trying to explain something. Well, you've already had this up 60 days. Now you got to have this out 14. You got to have this down 14. After that 14, you can put it back up. I just.
One thing to consider if you're looking for something that's workable and simple, you could always just go with something like 4 residential signs, no more than 5 square foot per sign, no more than like 20 square feet total, right? And then it could go year round, and you definitely make sure that you have the provision in there that if a sign's not maintained, it has to come down. So, that if someone keeps the election sign out forever till it gets faded and nasty, you can just say, hey, that has to go because it's faded, nasty, and tattered.
That sounds relatively simple and kind of covers it all, really. I mean, when you put a specific number on it, this is how many.
Until the neighbor says that they're tired of looking at that sign for 365 days.
It's true.
No, you will get that. You'll get that comment. You will.
You will.
20 square feet seems like an awful lot, too, to me. It's a pretty big area.
I'm just throwing numbers out there, but I did like. I did think that it was one thing Ann Arbor did was smart, was set an aggregate maximum on the total number of signs area of signs you could put out. So, but
I get the sense that we'll be getting comments. There will be comments regardless of what comes out. Mm-hmm. So I definitely agree. The simpler, the better. I mean, that makes it that much easier to enforce if they can understate it. And I just don't even see how you could even have the bandwidth at any level, even Ann Arbor, to be able to do that, to count days. And they're unfair as they sign year round, but they're going to complain regardless. Someone will about something with regard to the ordinance. So I don't know. We look at where we think we'll have the fewest complaints, I guess.
And the easiest to enforce. Right. Have you thought about looking like Ohio and Indiana, some cities there, what they've done, or is that not something that's really an option?
Oh, I mean, we haven't done that, but that's a good suggestion. Look at different states, see what they may be doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm sure this is a national issue.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
I bet you're going to find the same thing. Everybody's waiting for that one person to give them this really nice template. Because it is amazing that this went into effect, and this was found unconstitutional in 2016, and really everybody's having that discussion right now. That's a long time when you think about it.
Yeah, they're sitting back waiting for something to happen somewhere else, like we are. Or have done.
Who's going to be the first one to challenge it in court and fight it in court? I mean, that's where it's going to come down to. Getting this proven.
Well, I think we beat that to death. What's the 220?
Actually, on Friday, from a gentleman about that property that the aerial shows there. What you see there, that box-looking building, it actually was put there as a switch, a telephone ownership of it. So anyway, anytime someone calls me and says, hey, I got an idea about to do something with that property, I always want to listen. Well, what he's kicked out to me was, for RV storage. Our ordinance does not allow for any storage, even if he built something to be indoors. It doesn't allow for that type of use in the B1 district. Now, I told him if you had a good plan, and if the Planning Commission and City Commission would be, willing to listen, we could maybe make conditional rezoning. Now, from a storage standpoint, it's real close to downtown. So if it was going to be some kind of storage, it definitely have to be indoors. Mm-hmm. So, but I told him I'd bring it to this, kick it out to you guys. So I'm listening to all possibilities and give this gentleman a call back, because obviously he's just looking at, should he purchase it, not purchase it, that sort of thing.
You know, my
Like a
guess,
bad idea to me. I don't see anything positive coming out of that.
you know, my guess too, I'm the one that's probably caused you all the problem because I sold the guy the property. You look back, it was Bank of Alma. And right next door to the west is, you know, it's owned still by the bank. And then it button hooks around this house, and there's 2 lots out in front that are all the bank. I'm pretty much guessing, I won't speak for Mercantile, that they probably aren't. But number one, they probably don't know they have it. And then number two, probably don't want it because they're going to close the main office down there. They're going to keep the little drive-through open, but are going to have no use for that chunk of land. So, I mean, if the guy was going to do something, you know, you might have him get a hold of the bank and see if he could possibly buy a little more of it, or let him hook around and maybe have an entrance into that way. I don't know how else he's going to get in there. Does he own the lot in front?
No, that's probably held by a different couple.
So you got what, a little alleyway or something that gets you back there?
There's an alley. Yep.
That would be my question that you might pose to him, as saying that the bank has the lots behind it and then it button hooks around these other ones. I guess you got to be careful of how it would look so you don't, you know, this home's in front of it. But that, my guess is Mercantile's probably not real interested in owning that piece of property.
A lot of people aren't. That's why it's sitting there where it's at.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. But
Tell you what, you park a bunch of RVs on there, and every kid in town will be interested in it.
Yeah.
Be a real hangout for teenagers.
Yeah. At the very least, it had to be indoors for sure.
Yeah.
If it was going to be kind of storage, it had to be indoor storage.
Look at the trouble they have at the fairground when they store RVs in there, even, and that's.
This goes right to the woods and the railroad tracks right behind there too. Yeah, there could be a
quick getaway.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thing I worry about too is just what is storage and what are they storing too?
Yeah.
When does it become abandoned?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we know it, that switching building there would have been the nicest thing we've seen on there in a long time.
I just don't think it fits, and I don't, unless he's got a real plan vision that I'm not seeing, I don't understand why we did even entertain it.
Well, that's why I'm bringing to ask you, because that will be my comments back to him. And if you come up with like a really nice plan that you can lay out and show everybody, then we might consider it.
You don't know if reviving our downtown, and that just doesn't fit.
You don't know if he was talking about like storage units or something like, you know, like.
It was storage units, Don. No.
Okay.
No.
It was like a building, put up a building to store stuff in. Just general. Okay.
That's if he would do. That's if he was going to look at putting up a building for something, you know, outdoor storage. Obviously, that's even worse. So.
Yeah. Right. I know. Skip. Dolph does a pretty good job over there to Ithaca with the old trailer factory buildings for storage, and everything's all inside over there. But I don't know what this guy's got planned at all. So, well,
like Jim pointed out, though, without other access, there's not even a way for this to be that usable in that respect, unless you.
Some motion.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Jim's motion. Okay.
Sorry about
his standard motion. All right. All right. All those in favor of adjourning can give me a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time. Let us know here what happens with the medical building. We'll be prepared, everybody. I hope so.
Yep, we'll do.
All right. With that,
did we have somebody from the public on the line? Did they want to say anything?
We do. If they would like to make a comment before the meeting ends, they could dial *6, and that will unmute them.
I just want to make sure that